Thank you, Felipe, and thank you for inviting me to be here today and to be able to share a little bit of what has been our journey towards digital maturity. And as John said just moments ago, it's an endless journey. We're never there, so we're always evolving and we're always trying to go a little bit further in this digital journey. Okay, just a little bit, and I'm going to slide through some information. It's not exactly why we're here, but just to let you know, we're part of United Health Group. United Health Group is the largest healthcare organization in the world. It's has presence in all those countries. Those numbers are continuously increasing, so it's a huge organization. In Portugal, we have, compared to the larger organization, we have a small operation that has 7 hospitals and 6 outpatient centers that are spread throughout the country. We have one PPP. One PPP means one public-private partnership. So one hospital, one public hospital who has a private partner that manages, in this case, Lusíadas, part of United Healthcare. In terms of the group and how we organize and how we built our strategy, we had to find a model that made sense to have both sustainability on the long run and clinical outcomes on everything that we do. So basically we set on the IHI triple aim for healthcare, which is now the quadruple aim with human capital involved, and we've adopted the model to achieve our mission, which is stated on the left side, and of course having a how modus or a way of performing through our core values, which are being on the outside of the box of the strategy. And how do we deliver a strategy throughout the group? That's basically, we've spoken about silos moments ago. I don't know who was it that spoke about organizational silos. We have it within hospitals, we have between hospitals, we have it between organizations, even between administrative parts, finance, HR. We do have a lot of silos and we need to break them up in order to build a one team. So we adopted a strategy based on what we believe it's called the team of teams, and it basically is built on trust. Then we set a common purpose, then we grow a shared consciousness on how to work, and then we empower the execution. This comes from small teams. I don't know if you guys have heard about this. This comes from, in fact, a war strategy when the Allied forces were in Afghanistan. There was a need to put together a huge team made of small teams, FBI, CIA, MI6, Canadian Special Forces. And it was difficult to build one single team with all those silos because all these small teams were siloed organizations. So General McAllister had to find a way or find an operating method that would mimic the qualities of small teams into larger teams. And this is basically called the team of teams. And basically ends up with empowering execution in healthcare on the point of care. So basically pushing down information in order to empower the execution where it needs to happen on a day-to-day basis. Of course, if you're able to have one single strategy based on your values, focus on one mission, and you're able to empower the execution to achieve that mission, then you start getting all these recognitions on how you perform. And this is basically, some of these we already have throughout the group. Some of these we have only at our public-private partnership. Some of these we don't have yet. So for example, the ISO 27001, it's one project that's being, that we are currently running in Cascais, in the public-private partnership, and we're probably going to expand it in 2019 to all the group, the information certification. A little bit about Cascais and how we align our mission to what we do. In Portugal, we had, quite some years ago, we came to the UK and copied a little bit of what is your NHS. and try to deliver a similar NHS in Portugal. So there is a constitutional right in Portugal for people to have access to free healthcare. So basically, it should be universal and it should be delivered through a health system, mostly free of charge. And as you can see, and it's highlighted in the slide, there is a huge alignment between what the Constitution states that the government needs to do and what we as a mission pursue within United Health Group. So it was fortunate for us that we had a huge alignment in improving the way we deliver healthcare. I have here a video of Cascais.
Hospital de Cascais is a public hospital integrated with the Portuguese public health system and managed by Grupo Lusíadas under a public-private partnership regime. Opened in 2010, Hospital de Cascais provides full healthcare services to the residents of the municipality of Cascais and maternal and infant care services to the 8 parishes of the municipality of Sintra. Our mission is to help people live healthier lives and to help make the health system work better for everyone. One person at a time. Hospital de Cascais' strategic plan, rooted in the group's values of integrity, compassion, relationships, innovation, and performance, rests on 4 pillars: clinical excellence, best care experience for our patients, human capital development, efficiency and sustainability. We strive for clinical excellence. We do this by grounding our care in quality and patient safety best practices, by employing cutting-edge health technology, and by actively seeking performance evaluation from leading entities. We are proud of the distinctions we've received, as they are an important acknowledgement of the quality of the services we seek to provide every day to each one of our patients. And because our patient care is centered on human relationships, we actively invest in the humanization of this care, employing compassion and personalizing services to ensure a more comfortable environment. We are also focused on providing care to those who are themselves providers, having developed a number of initiatives to motivate our employees and help create a more positive, optimistic, and pleasant environment. And because improving the system means ensuring its sustainability, we've implemented more efficient processes, eliminating waste, ensuring continued capital reinvestment into operations, and contributing towards significant savings for the Portuguese government. Focused on you and on the future, Hospital de Cascais, caring is in our nature.
So basically we are 300, Cascais is a 300 more or less bed hospital and has these numbers here on the left that perform what we see as a day of the hospital on the right hand side. I would call out just the size of the emergency room. Just the size of the emergency room is pretty heavy for a hospital this big, which means that you have to have an enormous bottleneck with the inpatient ward, with admitting patients into the hospital. So there is a lot of pressure both on the emergency room and on the medical wards to receive these patients on a daily basis. Today I'm going to speak just about the stage 7, the road from a stage 6 to a stage 7. I believe you guys are not still a stage 6, so there is a room, there should be a prior slide to this, but I brought you the 6 to 7, which I think is common to every evolution in the digital maturity journey. So basically when we were at stage 6, this is how we saw stage 7. There was such a gap between the 6 and the 7. It's now a little bit what John just said moments ago, that HIMSS pushed the requirements down the stream. So basically now it's a lot harder to reach a stage 6 than it was a year ago when the previous requirements were valid, and it's now closer the 6 to the 7. So In the previous requirements, going from a 6 to a 7 was a huge jump, was a major difficulty. So this is how we looked at it. This is when we reached the stage 6. We did a self-assessment in Cascais. We called HIMSS Analytics, asked them for doing a gap analysis. They did a gap analysis. We were basically just about stage 6. We corrected some small stuff, and we started our journey for stage 7 when we reached the stage 6. So basically it's just a sense of the journey. We're never there. So one achievement is just the door for the next one. So we're always pushing harder on how to drive analytics, how to drive digital maturity in order to achieve greater quality and better patient experience. So stage 7, as I said, this was the way we did it. So it's not exactly aligned with the set of value or set of requirements today. So the interesting part about the stage 7 was when we decided that we were going to pursue the stage 7, we were in the beginning of 2017. This was January 2017. When we read the requirements, there was 117 requirements, and the way we decided to organize the requirements was in 7 teams. So there was something about the number 7, and what Felipe just said earlier about walking around the hospital and people feeling empowered or feeling knowledgeable about the maturity. If you walk around the hospital, I would say today is less vivid than it was a year ago. Everybody knew that number 7 meant something. Some of them knew exactly what it meant. Some of them did not know, but they knew that 7 was an important number. So basically we had the 117 requirements that we divided in 7 teams. And John just presented the 1, 2, 3 that I have here. This was stolen from his previous presentations, the 3 things that we needed when we decided to go on this endeavor. Of course, we had to invest. There was there a willingness to invest. And there is always opportunity cost. When we decide to invest on one thing, there's something else that we are not investing in. So the MRAM and this maturity model, what it gave us was a roadmap to IT spending. So instead of spending on IT like having DIOs, as Felipe just said, or DIO section of the hospital determining how are we going to spend it, we as a hospital as a whole decided to pull to us that decision and decided to analyze through the MRAM where we're going to invest our money in IT. Then was there a clinical engagement? Were the clinicians invested in the whole processes? And we're going to speak about, of course, the roadmap on engaging with clinicians, but it's critical. If you don't have the clinical teams involved in all steps of the processes, what you're going to have is resistance to adoption. So what we've done is we did not go to a shelf, and unfortunately there is not a shelf that you can go and buy stage 7. You don't buy stage 7, you build a stage 7. And you always need to build a stage 7. And because it's not the IT, it's not systems, it's processes, it's people, it's how we adopt IT and how do we move with IT and how do we align processes with systems. And then in the end, we needed leadership. And this is not leadership on one person. This has nothing to do with CEOs or CIOs from your hospital. This is leadership at every levels. So we need leadership. Previously, I spoke about the 7 teams. That's 7 leaders. Within those 7 leaders, those members of those teams had other sub-teams that they were all leaders. So you need to have leadership throughout the whole process. One of the things that we first said, for you guys it's easier because you're native speakers, we are not. So for us, English is a foreign language, and some of the vocabulary that is used is not completely perceived by our teams. So one of the things that we did is we broke out all the 117 requirements. It's not quite knitted, but so the thing is, here on the left you have the requirement itself, in English as it is on the 117 requirements. Then we asked the teams to say, do you understand it? And they had to say yes. And then I asked, can you translate it? And they said yes, so they had to translate it. So then we checked if they were understanding what the requirement meant. And then we asked them to those teams, do we have this requirement fulfilled? So it was nothing that was pushed top down. This was built bottom up. So we engaged with them and said, go and see if we have this requirement fulfilled. And the teams went to the ground. They brought people to their own teams to check if we were fulfilling what was the requirement. And then if they said yes, we had a color code for it, and I'm gonna show you a little bit on how these would show up in our dashboards. But we would ask, is it in place? And they would say yes. And I would ask, if you guys have, some of your hospitals must have joint commission. Joint commission always asks for evidence. Then I would ask for an evidence. Is it in place? So show me the evidence. What is the evidence? And they had to identify the evidence. And then it's a full ongoing processes of following through with the project. This was an 8-month project, so it was very, very, very intense. There were no weekends, no holidays. It was very, very intense for the whole team. And this is how we monitor it. This is a dashboard that we would, on a weekly basis, teams would report where they were, and this dashboard would be composed of seven different reports. And as you can see here, this is where we were at that point. Also, one of the things that we also measured was the risk of each requirement. So risk is an equation that multiplies probability with impact. So what's the probability of not fulfilling that requirement, and what would be the impact for the patient if we not fulfill that requirement? And then we would also assess risk. It's a way of measuring which requirements I cannot miss. So which one do I need to fulfill first in order to make sure that we were reducing the risk to the patient. Remember that this is a project that's not for the hospital, it's for the patient itself. So basically you're always looking at the patient throughout the process. Reaching or not reaching a stage 7, it's more or less a collateral win. What you want to assure is that you reach a higher degree of patient safety, reduce error, human error, and increase patient safety and quality. So several stages throughout the process, through the rollout of the project. Some of them were in the means of the stage 6. We got the stage 6 somewhere around here. And the meaning of these stages is that there are precedences. So there are stages that you cannot start if you don't start the previous one. It's a building block. There are building blocks to all of this. So you have to have a clear strategy where you want to reach, but then you have building blocks. And there is no sense in putting very high-end technology on one block if you do not have the integration to absorb that block. So the block, for example, does this point? Let me see. So this is ICUs. This is neonatology ICU, and this is ICU. So this is the highest complexity of the hospital. It could only be delivered at that point. We did not have the enough or the system prepared well enough to absorb an ICU integration. So we couldn't do anything to the ICU until we got the EMR prepared to receive all those devices, giving information back to the system. So again, building blocks and having a clear strategy on how to move forward. If we don't have a clear strategy, we're going to have some roadblocks as we undergo this project. And the project timeline. And here I said we started in February and we had the final audit in November. I understand that we have more pharmacists here than the rest of the clinical teams. But again, we had two new roles that we defined within the hospital, or we redefined the way we are looking at it. It was the Chief Medical Information Officer and the Chief Nurse Information Officer. The major difference was that we did not put the Chief Medical Information Officer reporting to the CIO. The Chief Medical Information Officer reported to the Chief Medical Officer. And the Chief Nurse Information Officer reported to the Chief Nurse Officer. So the thing is, it's clinical. It's all about the clinicians. It's all about how we look at patients. So the CIO here was an enabler. He would go to the meetings in order just to provide and hear how the maturity of their processes were being built. So again, this is the only highlight that I do of the process, because it was the most changing moment of the hospital. It was how we looked at technology and how we integrated technology into our day-to-day lives. So today, no doctor speaks with the chief information officer. They all speak with the chief medical information officer. No nurse or technician speaks with the chief information. They all speak with the chief nurse information that integrates all knowledge, all needs and prioritize. And instead of being a prioritization made by our partners that provide the system, it's a prioritization made by our clinical teams focusing on the patient. So again, it's how we look at it that changed a little bit. Then of course we had to see what was being done throughout the world. So we went to visit the other stage 7s that exist and share experience, learn a lot, copy a lot. By the way, copying is also innovation. So being able to copy what the best thing that has been done, it's innovative. And then we did a pre-audit, we did an assessment again. We had done a stage 6 validation, and then we asked for a stage 7 gap analysis. And HIMSS came over, they did a gap analysis. For the stage 7 was a little bit more difficult than it was from the stage 6 to fully understand what it meant and the dimension. For example, in clinical decision support systems, some of them we thought that we were doing them right, and you need to share information. You need basically to change experiences, because most of the difficulty that you guys feel in your hospitals, we feel the same. We feel exactly the same. So there's a lot more that we are alike than that we are different. So it's all about who is doing it, who has solved one problem. Let's go there, learn from them, and bring that knowledge and adapt to our reality. Then we had HIMSS coming over. They helped us refocusing our final targets, and then by June, end of June, we had finished the whole project. Then we had to gain maturity. And by the way, gaining maturity, it's tough. It's tough. It's very easy to achieve one stage, and again, Felipe just said that it's so easy to reach the stage and then fall back, because the adoption rate is not what we wanted. The system just blocked. There is some growing, I would say, opposition to some protocol that's imposed within the system. So you always need to look at analytics. You always need to gain maturity, to refocus, to fine-tune what is being delivered in order to keep adoption at a high rate. And then by November, we reached the final audit. And when we reached the final of course, then it was party time. It was a time of it was not party time because everybody was so tired. Everybody went to sleep for a week, and then we came back, and then we partied. So this is us receiving the Stage 7 award. This is in the US, and that's in Barcelona, where John just gave us the Stage 7 award. Takeaways, and I think this is the part that probably is important for you guys, because it's throughout any stage. It's stage free, if you want. There has to be an alignment with the hospital strategy. You cannot have two strategies. You cannot have an IT strategy and a hospital strategy. You cannot have a patient portal or a doctor portal if it's not within the major strategy of the hospital, is how you communicate. So there has to be a huge alignment, and there has to be sponsorship from the board. So basically, who takes decision, who makes the decisions within your organizations need to be involved, everything related with IT and with the systems that you're putting in place. Then engagement, communication. And again, it's not the same as communicating to a lawyer, and I'm a lawyer, Felipe just said that. Communicating with a doctor, with a pharmacist, with a nurse, you need to know who your target is. So one of the things that I've learned in communication was STPP. So story, telling, people, and place, right? So you need to know what's your story, who is telling the story, to whom they're telling the story, and where are they telling the story. So again, if you don't get that right, you won't be able to communicate the objective of an MRAM project. The MRAM project is critical to hospitals today, as we are loaded with massive amount of data that we're not using it correctly. So again, you need to communicate well and to know what to communicate. Then focus on process improvement. The plan, do, study, act, all that cycle of continuous improvement needs to be at the core of your organization. If it's not, you have to force it. You need to enforce that people are continuously looking for improvement of their own processes. It's so easy to point fingers and say, I'm not doing this because. Let's start doing what we can do. There's a lot that we can do. And it's difficult to have a full picture of an organization and where the bottlenecks are. So if you are continuously focusing on, or if you're permanently focused on continuous improvement, what will happen is those bottlenecks will free some space and process will start improving as a whole. Then proactive change management. I believe this is one of the most critical aspects or takeaways that we've learned from our journey to stage 7. It's very, very important that management understands that if we are proactive in understanding what's going to be the roadblock, what is going to be the difficulty to the teams, and lowering the standards to the operational part of team. Remember that I just spoke earlier about a team of teams and empowering execution. For decision to be well taken, it needs to be taken at the level that the problem is. It cannot be taken in the boardroom. You cannot make decisions at a boardroom level if you don't understand the problem at the bottom. So when you change, when you want to change the way a hospital manages their systems and manages the way they deliver care and ensure patient safety, you need to go to where the problem exists and understand where you need to proactively change both processes, systems, people, some parts infrastructure in order to better take care of the process. And then in the end, celebrating success. It's a long journey, a very long journey. And you're never there. It's unbelievable. You want to if you're only going to celebrate when you reach a stage, there are so few stages that you're gonna forget what celebrate is all about. You need to celebrate small successes. Remember, it's all about the patient. If it's all about the patient, there are so many things that we can celebrate when we improve a little bit of the process. So understanding the importance of celebrating success, putting people together, making sure that we're all aligned, that we all have a shared consciousness of what we're doing with the project. So if somebody told me all these 5 things when I started the project, I believe I would be a lot more efficient and we would not have spent so many nights without sleeping. PDSA, so as you know, PDCA has changed to PDSA, and basically it's a continuous improvement process. We are never there, as I said before. So basically, what are we now doing at Cascais and looking forward, and what are we doing with the private units? So we have one public hospital, as I said earlier, and we have some other private hospitals, and we're all adopting the MRAM. So all of the hospitals are adopting MRAM. We're part of United Healthcare. United Healthcare has one part of United Healthcare is Optum. Optum is an organization based on analytics and on technology. So it's within our DNA to adopt technology. So first of all, we need to save our information and make sure that we have solid processes. We are all facing with GDPR. GDPR, it's complicated. Just to be compliant with GDPR, it's hard. We wanted to take a step further and go into 27001. So we're trying to be compliant with 27001. If we are, we'll be the first hospital to be compliant with 27001 in Portugal. I believe in the Iberia, I haven't quite understood if there's any hospital with 27001. Even our auditor that's helping us with the process doesn't really understand the increased difficulty with healthcare and with being a 27001 compliant hospital. You have some examples here in the UK. Also the infram. Infram is one, so John spoke about the several models that HIMSS has, and I refer here to Infram and MM. and I would probably point out it's more sensitive to what I want to say. is the analytical maturity model. Once you start putting all these pieces together, you want to make sure that those pieces keep on working well. So you start producing a lot of data. And those data, and that data eventually ends up in a dashboard, eventually ends up in a KPI. And if you don't have a maturity model for KPIs, what happens is you start having hundreds of analytics. And making sure that we follow operational analytics in a good way, it's difficult. It's difficult. Again, empowered execution is those who operate the model or the business know what they want to control. But as you pull up information and you start to get a higher sense of what you're controlling, you need to have a maturity model. So we're doing the self-assessment on the in order to understand which of the analytics that we're now following should we keep on following, which are evolving. So again, you're never there, you're always evolving. As you look at the broader part of the group and outside Cascais, we have other hospitals. Two of them are quite large. And we've already done a stage 6 in Oporto. So one of the hospitals is done with the stage 6. The other one, we're trying to be compliant with the new standards for stage 6 by the end of this year. We have a full audit scheduled for December 13. It has been quite a journey. I left the journey for the stage 7 in Cascais and started the stage 6 in Lisbon. And I would say that Lisbon probably, as I spoke earlier with John, was more or less where some of your hospitals may be, which is a lot of technology within, a lot of things done, a lot of good things done, but very little integration, very little overall analysis on how the system as a whole is working. It doesn't work if we have silos of systems. If you have the radiology system on one hand, if you have the administrative on the other, on the PACS on the you need to integrate all those systems in order to have one full view. And as I've written there, work in progress. It is work in progress. We're struggling. Hopefully, we'll have a successful audit by December 13. But I'll tell you on December 14. Well, I have one thing here before this would be over. They said I have 5 more minutes. So if I have 5 more minutes, I wanted to show you this because we added this slide in the interval just before the session. So one of the things that technology does not only deliver technology and better outcomes. If you drive it well, it delivers a higher perception by the patient. It delivers better care. So as you can see over there, that's a triple aim for healthcare, right? Better health, better care, and lower cost per capita, right? So we've called a philosophy that we've now pushed throughout the group. It's called the high care. And high care means that I'm pushing technology in, but I'm not putting technology by technology. What I want to do is I want to be able to deliver a higher touch or a higher human care, if you want. So basically, I want to make sure that clinicians, nurses, doctors, pharmacists have time with patients, not being behind a computer like it's a typical view within a system. Is you go to see your doctor, to see your nurse, and either they have everything on paper and then there is no computer, but you're not there yet. So, or you have a computer in front of you. What we were trying to do is, can we work with the computer side by side? Can we have it helping? So this is part of the solution. What Gonçalo is going to explain a little bit, this is part of it, is can we save time of fulfilling long records, inputting patient data? So for a colonoscopy, this is one example. For a colonoscopy, the doctor had to input the patient's information 16 times. We counted. Within our system, it was 16 different inputs for the same information. Can't we make it one information? Can you see the amount of error, possible error, human error within that system? If I'm inputting the same information in 16 different spots, can you see there might be human error in all one of those? So could we find one place of doing it all? So again, high tech and high touch is not exactly about buying the latest CT and having better image is how we use technology to make sure that the doctor has more time next to the patient and nurse has more time in delivering the patient. This was in fact a project developed by nurses in Hospital de Cascais. We built it in the hospital, and we actually measured the NPS, the Net Promoter Score, of nursing within the inpatient ward. So the nursing care within the inpatient ward has its own NPS score, and they measure it. And the fun part of it is I offered myself to pay for an outside company to measure the NPS, and the nurses said, no, we'll do it. They added work to their daily workload, which is already heavy. They wanted to make sure that they are doing and they are being perceived by the effort that they're doing. And how can they correct? So it's starting to be that PDSA that I spoke earlier, that completely so they study where do they make their errors. And normally what we find in terms of where the error occurs was not exactly where we at the boardroom sit and take decisions, where we thought it was. So you definitely need to empower execution, need to embrace the change, and need to make sure that you have leadership throughout the process in order to feed the project well and to make sure that change occurs where it needs to occur. And that was it. Thank you.